Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining today's webinar with Alvo Minerals. I'm Annabel, Munro, Account Director here at Investability, and I'm delighted to be joined by Rob Smakman, the Managing Director of Alvo. Now, it's quite an encouraging time for Alvo as yesterday's release exposed the highlights of the first drill results from the C3 prospect as part of their maiden 10,000 metre drill program at its copper zinc BMS Palmer project located in central Brazil. Now, just to give you an overview of how this webinar will progress, Rob's going to briefly talk through the highlights of the results, and then we're going to open up to a Q&A. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, Rob, to talk us through the highlights.
Thanks, Annabel. It's a real pleasure to be here and talking to everyone a little bit about what we announced yesterday. We're obviously pretty pleased with the numbers and happy to just run through a little bit of what we're thinking and how it's going. So it was our first withdrawal results that we published yesterday. We've kicked off a 10,000 metre drill program a few days after we listed, so I was really pleased that we got that going, and to have our first set of results already is pretty significant. Obviously, all of the 7 holes that we've announced so far gave us some pretty good results. The highlights being hole 7 and number 1. Some really spectacular widths and grades there. The background that I've got behind me here is actually drill core from hole 12, which we'll talk about a little bit as well. But so the sulfides are so visual, and the grade boundaries are quite sharp that it's a pleasure to drill these intersections and hit them. I'm not going to run through each hole and how they've looked, but we're certainly really pleased with both copper and the zinc grades. The zinc grades are a bit surprising for us, much better than we expected. The copper was where we thought it would be. Really happy about the actual drilling itself. Currently got 2 drill rigs operating at C3. At the moment, we're on holes 13 and 14. And we've got 4 more holes after those 2 particular holes to finish at C3 for phase 1, and then we'll shift the rigs down to C1. That's the sort of general plan. Hole 12, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the cross section, gave us a fabulous visual intercept, and I've got some photos of that coming up as well. Which was around 39 metres of high-grade mineralisation. So a lot of that is massive, some of it's semi-massive. Got some stringer sulfides as well, which is it's quite encouraging hole. One of the real surprises that we had was a couple of hits of previously unrecognised supergene mineralisation. So reasonable width of 15 metres at 1.2% in hole 2. Hole 3, which on the same section actually had a slightly smaller and slightly lower grade intercept, but I think that's because there's a reason for that, so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So that was really encouraging for us, and something that we'll be following up on, both from the historical work that's been done, but also in our own work and logging. The phlegm surveys that we completed and we announced a few weeks ago, that's really it's part of an exciting part of the project as well. That was done on a different prospect called C1. But we've ordered the machinery. It's almost ready to come out to Brazil, and as soon as it does, it's going to be surveying across this particular prospect C3. So quite excited about what the potential could be, because that will really show us where the extensions are going, we hope. So that's an important next step. Results pending on plenty of drilling. I think we submitted holes 10 and 11 to the lab today, so 7, 8, 9 results should be back in our hands in a couple of weeks. Our intention is to try and do an update of exploration with drill results and what's going on over here every sort of 4 to 6 weeks. That's our plan. At the moment, we've got a real advantage in Brazil with the lab that we're using. Our turnaround time is averaging just under 5 weeks. So that's a real advantage compared to what we're hearing from Australia anyway, where it can be up to 3 months. It certainly helps with planning and timely turnaround of results as well. And I think I've spoken about C1. So I'm just going to start with this slide, which is where we are. We're pretty much right in the middle of Brazil, about 6 hours drive north of the capital city. I'm currently speaking to you from the town of Palmeirópolis, which is the project's named after Palma. and it's a great little town. We've got bitumen all the way to site. It's about a 15k drive out to C3, which is here in the north, and about the same. It's about 10 kilometres out to C1, which are our two main prospects at this stage. So quite easy access. It's raining season at the moment. We're coming towards the end of it. It rains, but it hasn't been enough to stop us drilling or conducting any exploration. So it's wet and it's a bit muddy, but we're managing to continue drilling the whole way through, which is really encouraging as well. Onto the drill plan. This was announced in yesterday. Basically, you can see there's an outcrop in Gossan, which runs sort of northeast southwest through C1, and the best grades tend to be concentrated in this area through here. The reason we drilled three main sections. We've started on the southern section here, and we're going to push a little bit further north and a little bit further south in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, the main three sections are in the centre here. This first section that we're going to look at was a real gap in the resource. So the drilling to the north and the drilling to the south was about 100 metres apart. And for any resource work that we're going to do in the future, we needed to fill that gap. And so we took the opportunity to drill a bunch of holes on that same section to try and really get an understanding of how the continuity is up and down dip, how the geology hangs together between holes. And we kept on getting good grades and certainly good width. So we were encouraged to stick around and have a crack at it. Hole 10, which is at the lab at the moment, didn't really hit any great sulfides. So we'll see how that goes. There may be some part of the super G mineralisation of it with it. So we'll see how that comes out. But hole 8, which is the one at the bottom here, that certainly had a really nice hit, about 80 metres of massive sulfide as well, looking at a pretty reasonable spot. Just to explain a little bit about this cross section, the hatched area that you can see is the mineralised resource outline that we published as part of the prospectus. So that was obviously the inferred outline, and you can see how close our interpretation has come to that hashed outline. So we're pretty encouraged with our model was reasonably accurate for that particular section. Another thing to note, there's a marker horizon which is really helping us, and what that means is above the actual, when I call above, it's in the hanging wall, above the actual mineralisation zone, you can see that yellow interpreted geological unit. It's called a chert unit, and that tends to sit right above where the mineralisation is going to be, which is typical of VMS. So yeah, really that helps us a lot with trying to understand some of the old logging that's been done, and kind of helps us with our interpretation. Onto the next section, which again drilled in between. This is the one that had the hits of the supergene mineralisation. So hole 2 is quite close to the actual main ore body. We hit the VMS a little bit further a little bit down dip from that. So that still gave us a good hit, 6 metres at a couple of % copper and nearly 8% zinc. But it's this zone here which is of interest to us. So with supergene mineralisation, you tend to get meteoric waters moving around and dissolving the sulfides and then redepositing them somewhere away from the ore body. And it makes sense to us that that would happen in and around sort of the base of oxidation, which is in this sort of area here. And the further you get from the actual ore body, it may be that it's lower grades. So despite this being a little bit lower grades, it is still kind of meeting that model, and it's the first time that's been recognised. So yeah, pretty excited about what that could be. Obviously when you're mining, it's going to be the first thing that comes out of the ground. So if it is significant, we want to know about it, and we'll be doing some work to follow that up. Okay, this is the third section. This is the section that's given us a bit of a headache in terms of our interpretation, and I'm not sure if everyone recalls, but when we published the first set of visual results way back in December, we talked about hole 1, and we were really excited to hit mineralisation in hole 1, 25 metres at 1.8%, 14% copper. Zinc is a ripper intercept, and I think we were justifiable in putting that announcement out there. But there was a problem with it because this particular hole, 126, when we plotted it on the same screen, it actually intercepted around about this level here. Excuse me, around about this level here. And what that meant was that there was no mineralisation in hole 126. But when we plotted it, the amount of lift that we saw in that particular hole was really unusual and quite improbable, to be honest. We left it there because we didn't have anything better information. Now that we do, and we've looked at the geology on it, we think the interpretation of having this quite steep is the correct alignment. And we're encouraged by that because hole 12, which is the hole that hit the 40 metres of massive sulphide or 39 metres of massive sulphide, is below that and basically leaves this section wide open at depth. So yeah, quite excited about what that means for the future for C3. It certainly looks like it's getting good widths and good grades at depth, and yeah, plenty to see down dip, that's for sure. I just wanted to share one photo. This is from hole 12. I'm not sure if everyone can see any detail on it, but this is just the typical core photography that we do of all the drilling. And just here on the end here is the bottom part of that. Sorry, this is hole 7. Excuse me, not hole 12. So we've got the results from this particular hole. These were the headline results, and 23 metres at 3.3% copper and 8% zinc, with including 10 metres at 6% copper. And obviously, you can just see from the slide that the 10 metres starts around here and finishes around here. It's got a much more golden hue to it, which is the chalcopyrite, same as the stuff behind my head here. And the rest of the intercept is a lot more sphalerite and a lot more pyrrhotite pyrite. And the bottom of the intercept is actually here. So you can see from this particular image that when the massive sulphide finishes around about here, you still get stringer, disseminated glebby sulphides coming through, which give us good grade as well. I think that was it. So yeah, I'd like to throw it back to you, Annabel. If there's any questions that have come through, happy to have a chat.
Yeah, fantastic. There's obviously enormous potential for Alvo's flagship Homer project, Rob, so congratulations. Yeah, that does bring us to our Q&A section of the webinar. A question from Ben came through. He's asked, how often can we expect results from here on in? What is the turnaround time for assay results in Brazil?
Yeah, so I did mention that the results turn around really quick, much quicker than Australia at the moment. So around 5 weeks, we're getting turnaround. We've got, we submit samples to the lab on a sort of week to every 10 days. So we're aiming to update the market with results and exploration news kind of every 4 to 6 weeks.
Question from Dave. How many more holes do you have planned at each prospect? Yeah,
I can answer C3 definitively. We ran through the drill planning today before we moved the rigs. So we're on holes 13 and 14 at the moment, and we've got 4 more holes planned. So currently, the blue holes are the ones that we're working on at the moment. So 13 and 14. The 4 holes that we'll be drilling are going to be up to the north here. We're going to do 2 holes on this section, the outside 2, and then we're going to do 2 holes on this section here, shallower holes that will infill some gaps that we have. And we just hopeful that they'll be decent holes as well. Holes 13 and 14 we're classifying as kind of a combination upgrade expand, so they should add tons as well as category. And the last 4 that we'll drill, which should only take us a week or so, will be more on the upgrade category. In terms of C1, we're drill planning at that at the moment, and we're probably budgeting around 4,000 metres there. We'll probably do that in 2 phases, but I haven't got a definitive number for you yet. We're working through it. Obviously, with the recent phlegm survey that we completed at C1, there's some really juicy deep targets there as well. The difference being that C1's a lot shallower than C3, so we're looking at that as well.
To fast track exploration, can we expect more rigs on site in the coming months? That's from Eric.
Look, we're talking about it. Nothing definitive as yet. As I mentioned, C1 is a lot shallower than C3, and it's got like a longer strike zone. So There's a lot more shallow drilling to do at C1. So we're looking at RC rigs to try and punch some of those shallower holes out. Haven't kind of got one yet because they're hard to find in Brazil, hard to find good ones. So yeah, that's something that we're looking at, but nothing definitive. I'd like to.
Anna's written in and asked, with the upcoming phlegm survey at C3, what are you hoping to find?
Extensions, I think, is the answer to that. Look, it's C3. On surface at C3, there's quite a strong. It's part of a regional anomaly on the surface, which is really noisy from the VTEM survey that was flown back 2008. And it's given there's an anomaly below it, but it just makes the interpretation much more difficult. So with the phlegm survey, we can see past the noise and hopefully much deeper and see where the conductors go, and then use those targets to really save time and money on the drilling. And that's kind of one of the real exciting parts of the phlegm survey. So we'll see how it goes.
What's it like to operate in Brazil? What is access to the project like, and how hard is it to build a team and source equipment? That's from Will.
I could talk for an hour on this subject. Brazil is fabulous. I very comfortable operating here. I think it's and I don't know how to break it down into categories, but infrastructure-wise, there's roads, there's power, there's water. We're close to rail. There are smelters within Brazil if we, once we get to that point, and there's accommodation. Everything's quite simple from that perspective. The people here, the social license to operate on site, which can be troublesome wherever you go and really important wherever you go, is been fabulous. We've had such a good response from the locals here that they've been waiting for someone to come in and unlock the promise of this project for 40 years. So we've been welcomed with open arms from that perspective. Brazil itself is cheaper than Australia to operate. So everything from drilling is cheaper, and food and fuel and, you name it. So we're saving money on that side of things. And also the availability of quality people has been surprising. So I think I was really lucky getting Julia Liz on board. He's a really experienced geo who's worked with juniors and majors all over the place. He's built a great little team here. Last week I said to him, look, we've got this geophysical equipment coming. We need a geophysicist. And so he goes, I don't know any. I said, well, plug your network. And 2 days later, we've got a guy called Ed Marr who's going to join us, and I think he'll be perfect. So yeah, from that perspective, it's been great. Turnaround of the labs is quicker. If they really need another diamond ring, I can have 2 on site, I think, in another month easily, and an RC rig. We'll see how I go with that. So yeah, it's a pretty good spot.
One from Isabel. When will you expect to update the C3 resource to include the recent holes? And will gold be included in the next MRE update?
Gold, definitely. We've got enough information now, both from the RASAing and from the current work that we've been doing. Updating the resource, we'll only do that when it's going to be material. And at the moment, we've done a dozen holes. I think we need to do a lot of extension holes to unlock how big this could be. So our plan is to finish the next, these 2 plus 4, move to C1, bring the EM survey in over C3 and see how deep it goes, and if there's any kind of indication we can get from that. It will definitely be conductive, so I'm sure there's going to be some more targets to drill, and then we'll bring the rigs back, drill a bunch of holes, and then talk about an MRE update. So exact time frame I don't really have at the moment, but it's a few months away.
Any issues with the historical network?
We've had it reviewed by a consultant out of Australia. They think there's no issues, but obviously it's 40 years old, and the amount of advancements that's happened in the met scene has been quite extraordinary. Metallurgy is always a really key part of VMS projects, so we've actually gone out to tender on the lab work already, and I expect that we'll be shipping sample to Australia for C3 within the month, if not 6 weeks. So yeah, pretty keen to move it forward as quick as possible. Obviously, we need results back from the lab before we can do it, but we're very cognizant of how important the medic network is. Because we want to push it forward.
Do you expect incorporating the recent holes at the grade will increase at C3? That's from Thomas.
Too early to tell. Certainly the results have been fabulous. The widths have been surprising. So I feel like it'll be, that'll have a positive impact on the tonnage of the areas that we've drilled so far.
Why did Alvo start the infill drilling instead of extensional? That's from James.
I think more about understanding that. I mean, we had a lot of options to put the holes in, but we were basing all of our work off drill logs that were 40 years old and incomplete core. So we did spend a lot of time looking at the old core, and we didn't actually cut. You don't know what you don't have. So when there's bits missing, it's probably been missing because it's the best stuff. It's been sampled for met, or it's been stolen because people want a souvenir from the project. And so it was quite jumbled, and it's hard to form a real picture about how the deposit looks. So we really started in the middle because we wanted to understand the geology a little bit better, and we've achieved that so far. So that's pretty much the reason.
What is the significance of PD012? That's from Emily.
Yeah, hole 12. Look, I think I spoke about how the original interpretation had cut that section off at depth, which was a bit of a question mark for us because that hole that was cutting us off, it just didn't look right on any of the sections. The significance of hole 12 is that it reopens that whole section, and at depth it's completely open. So apart from being a really wide intercept and the widest one we've had so far, it's significant because of it keeps us open at depth.
Laurie's asked, will you be doing downhole EM on some of the recent holes as well as the phlegm survey? Yeah, absolutely.
So we've been casing all of our holes at C3 from hole 3 onwards, thinking that was going to be a strategy going forward. So yeah, there's plenty of holes for us to go and do downholes on at C3 for sure. And with downhole surveys, they have less distance that they see, but because they're so much deeper, you get a better picture on the plate location. So a combination of ground surveys and downhole is going to be a really powerful exploration tool for us, I think.
Jennifer's asked, do you have a portable XRF at site?
Certainly do. We don't use it in a systematic way, but we do use it for answering questions on different rock types and mineralogy and that sort of stuff. And, the guys have always got it in their hands looking at stuff, and yeah.
The final question, what is the timeline to test the regional targets? And has the recent drilling given you more confidence in the prospectivity of these targets?
We've got so much work in front of us straight away that it's impossible to give you an answer on the timeline. But look, we're drilling C3, we'll move to C1, we'll come back to C3 and just keep drilling until we're getting an idea of how big this could be. I think what's really capturing our team's imagination over here in terms of what the belt or what the district can offer is that the EM works so well, and it gave us so much encouragement that the additional targets that we've seen from the VTEM survey, so the stuff that was done in the past in 2008, if half of those come up with decent ground EMs anomalies, we're going to have multiple discoveries in going forward. So is it more prospective? Probably from our perspective it is, yeah, I think so. So less about the drilling and more about the EM and what the possibilities could be. And I think once we've drilled some of these deeper conductive targets that we've seen at, say, C3, at C1 so far, we'll have a better answer to that. But yeah, pretty excited about what the district potential is, because districts like this size around the world host 20, 50, 40 million tonnes. And we don't know if we've got that potential, but we certainly think that that's a possibility.
Now, just finally, Rob, to bring everyone up to speed, what can shareholders expect over the next 6 months from Alvo?
Well, drilling results, exploration going forward. We'll push as hard as we can on upgrade, expand, discover, our little motto that we've been pushing to the team here. I'm an exploration geologist. I want to make discoveries. I know that we have to drill upgrade holes to try and understand the geology and make our every exploration dollar count. But discovery is where I'm at. So we're hoping that we'll drill some of these really juicy targets that haven't been drilled before, and that I can fill in and talk to everyone about that.
That's all we've got time for today, Rob. But look, fantastic results, and we can't wait to see what Alvo has in store over the next little while. So thanks for your time.
Great. Thanks, Annabel, and thanks everyone for logging in. Cheers.